Hey, what's up, bud?
Who joined? Oh, Econoboi, what's up?
Nothing much. How's your day going?
It's going good. Can I just end with one more quick thing?
Into what?
I'm just... Sneako, I don't know if I brought this up on the stream. What?
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just real quick. I'm sorry. Apparently, I guess he still watches me because he posts like apparently he posts screenshots of me in his Discord. I didn't know that. This message was simultaneously one of the saddest and funniest messages I've ever seen in my life. Sneako posted in his Discord. Doing the jail stream with Aiden Ross today at 3 p.m. EST. Do me a favor and spam W.
Rappers flex the degen lifestyle, rife with provocative women, drugs, alcohol, and reckless spending on cars and jewelry. How does Sneako not see that this is what he emulates?
True. Doing the jail stream with Aiden Ross today at 3 p.m. EST. Do me a favor and spam W Sneako in chat. Some of his fans get butthurt when I talk about Ukraine, the vaccine, and the gender agenda. Very funny that the Rumble chat thinks I'm too normie now and the Kick chat thinks I'm too schizo. I'll plan a desktop stream for tonight. Have forgot about the talent show. Tonight can be good for the talent show, actually. 9 p.m. EST, I'll debate more. Bro, imagine, like, guys, I'm going to go to another person's chat. Can you guys please, spam W's for me so that they don't think that I'm, like, a corny-ass loser? Like, bro... Okay, what's up?
You're bullying Destiny. This is bully behavior.
The guy bullies himself, okay? He's an easy target. I can't. If you're going to be an easy target, I'm going to bully you.
He brings it on himself.
He does, by being an easy target.
That's fair. No, I got several pings yesterday about you reacting to, I guess Ethan has a socialist producer that he...
No, he has a retarded producer. Although I guess those two things are kind of synonymous now, but
oh no. Well, I saw the video and it seemed like you were saying are unions socialist or are they just another business?
Hey, I've been watching a lot of Zerka lately, and it seems to me that guy somehow did more damage to the red pill community than you ever did. Sorry. I don't think they were ready for him.
True. Okay. Say that last part again.
Yeah, it seemed like you had questions about unions.
Oh, no, I didn't have questions.
I guess like
unions are not socialist.
Oh no.
But you can talk about it if you want, or if you disagree with it. But I'm not. That's not a question that I have. I've never asked that question. But go ahead.
Well, I thought it was like, couldn't you think of unions as just like other businesses or like other firms that the government kind of tries to regulate as a separate institution?
I feel like that's exactly what I said.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, do you think that unions? I mean, if you think of socialism as like a democratization of the economy, do you think unions fit into that mold at all?
Well, I don't know. I don't think of socialism as a democratization of the economy. I think of socialism as workers owning the means of production, and there not being like private investment or private owners.
Okay. I mean, I think that. Yeah, I think I had a similar thought. I think that part of the reason why I had some confusion in this regard was because it seems like a lot of socialists today will say that socialism is when workers own businesses and when workers own the means of production. But I mean, really, that's not, like, historically, that's not really quite what socialism has meant. It doesn't really seem like many historical socialists had this thought of, oh, well, socialism is essentially when workers own the businesses that they work at. Some people had that conception, but it seems like generally, speaking, socialism was more generic than that, where socialism was more collective ownership or social ownership.
Sure. Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you. You know what would be really based, actually, to get to the bottom of this? Are there any like really big professors on YouTube that talk about socialism? I think it'd be really sick if I could maybe reach out to one of them and then I could get like a concrete definition on like what do people mean when they say socialism, right? Can you think of anybody?
Yeah, I mean the best, I've already recommended, the best socialist really in the whole policy space is probably Matt Brunig.
Oh fuck, I was fucking with you. I was referring to Professor Wolf. My bad.
Oh well, that's the thing. Like obviously some socialists like Richard Wolff will say, my socialism is essentially workplace democracy, which, I mean, I mean, it's obvious that I mean, I think fairly enough, like you could call that a type of socialism, right? If all businesses were owned by workers.
Sure. Okay, can I just like real quick? This is my issue, okay? The problem with
Okay.
socialism today is that socialism is it's a Mott and Bailey that I hate, okay?
Yeah.
In that people will say they'll do it's a Mott and Bailey kind of in the same way that conservatives used to use it as an attack in the past, right? Like people like conservatives would say something like you'd say something like, oh, like I want fuck, I can't even think of anything. Anytime you wanted more government spending, like conservatives would say that's socialism.
Right.
And then you'd be like, no, it's social spending. And then yeah, like everything was socialism. But now it feels like progressives have wrapped around to that same thing, where now all forms of socialized medicine is socialism. Not really. But I mean, if you want to call it that, so what you're saying, if you want to be like, well, we can describe socialism very broadly as kind of this social investment that government might make into protecting the rights of workers, providing for its citizens, whatever. Fine. That's fine if you want to say that. But the problem is, as soon as you be like, okay, sure. If that's what you want to call socialism, I can get on board with it. Then the next thing is going to be like, okay, that's awesome. I'm glad you agree with me. Billionaires are evil and we should execute all business owners and landlords. It's like, oh, okay. Like, as soon as you agree to these like very weak, cupped, flaccid, tiny dicked versions of socialism that can all exist in a capitalist environment, but there's no reason to ever invoke the word socialism. As soon as you agree to it, then they want to move over to the real parts of socialism, where they're saying like, oh, cool, well, time to start expropriating businesses, time to start nationalizing industries, and time to start making it illegal to own homes or even have like private owners. Sorry, I got you. That's my issue, is the Mott and Bailey feel of it. Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I mean, yeah, that's obviously fair. I mean, you can see a lot of really just radicals of any type of ideology say the same thing. I tweeted just the other day about how it seems like conservatives will argue for means testing for welfare, but really they just mean, I don't want anybody to be on welfare, so I'm going to make it really hard to get welfare, right?
Sure.
And
same thing as when conservatives are like, we need to domestically spend more and stop spending on Ukraine. And it's like, you mean you just don't want to spend on anything, you fucking piece of shit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. Like this, some libertarian account that was like, I can't believe we spent $100 billion on Ukraine, and I think it was maybe SDL who was like, what $100 billion welfare program do you support? Libertarian Party of New Hampshire or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's pretty fucking bullshit, right? But I think that that's where, just having like a decent holistic understanding can help a little bit, right? Because like you mentioned socialized medicine. I mean, I think it's fair to say that if like take the UK, for example, with their NHS system, that's like obviously like a socialist institution, right? It was founded by, well, yeah, right. I mean, medicine is a service, and there's products of medicine as well. It's a means of production, right? And it's
but the means of
owned.
production isn't owned collectively by the workers. It's owned and operated by the government. The same way that we wouldn't say China and their state-owned enterprises, we wouldn't call that socialist, right? We would call that state capitalism, right? Because the profits are being sent back to the owner, which in this case happens to be the government, and the directions and everything are not being made collectively by the workers. It's being made by the owner, the private owner of that capital, which is the government. And then employees are, the exploitation, blah, 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 right? Yeah.
Well, it's not.
Don't say right, because you just said it was social. I disagree with that. I don't think it is. I think it's
no. But that's where it's more complicated than that, right? Because obviously, like if we're just saying socialism is when there's national industry, right? That's probably a bit vacuous, right? And probably not fair, because most socialists wouldn't say like authoritarian China or like Nazi Germany were socialist countries because of how authoritarian they were. There wasn't really there was a very top-down hierarchical government, right? But when we're talking about like something like the UK, where essentially they took over an industry under a democratic framework, and that, in the case today, that industry, this sort of NHS system, is democratically accountable and has, communal and social purpose. I think it's fair to call that a form of socialism, where if you have state ownership that's like robustly democratic, I mean, that's probably socialism, right? If we understand like historically what socialism is. And so it's
I guess, but then at that point we just have like, I don't know what socialism means at that point. Like, I don't know what we're even talking about. Like, in my world, socialism means that when I go to work, I'm going to engage with capital that I own collectively with the other people that work that capital. It is the fact that when I work, any product or service that I create or deliver no longer is another party, a third party, a private owner, scraping any of the excess of what I produce off from what I earn as a wage. All of the excess that's created goes back to me because I have equity ownership of all the capital. That's my understanding of what socialism is. What you're talking about is just like it's still a private firm, kind of. And the idea of like socialism, it is quote unquote public, but the profits and everything go back to the government. If the NHS performs well, these workers, they don't have equity ownership in like the government, and they get like a paycheck back for it. They can't sell or buy shares of their work. That's not cooperatively run and owned. They don't even get to dictate their own policy. We could literally have a vote publicly and say the NHS has to do this, and every worker could disagree, and it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have a say. That's working for a private firm. It just happens to be that the firm is the government. Now, again, if you want to say it's socialism because it's like when the government does stuff or runs stuff, I guess it's fine. But it feels so weird that we ran back to the straw man conservative argument of socialism, and now that's what we unironically call socialism. That's so weird to me.
Well, of course, like we can imagine. I mean, of course, it makes sense that. I mean, socialism could very well be when the government does certain things, right? Like if the government collectivizes an entire industry, that's not really capitalism, right? And it just depends on the framework of how it might be set up. Like for instance, if we were to imagine, for instance, that the government, let's say that we had like a government that was very democratic, like Finland or Norway or something like that, and let's say that they voted, they decided, we're just going to nationalize every industry's returns are going to be socialized, and all the capital is going to be owned by the government. It's a very democratic country. Obviously that would cause some problems in the economy, but things would work out to some proportion of how they work out today. Although workers in those firms aren't directly making the decision on the firm level, if all returns of capital are socialized, I mean, that's not capitalism, right? That's not, I would call that socialism, right? And I think that's where
I don't know what any of the words mean. I have no fucking idea. I don't know what anything is. I don't know anything. I just don't know. I don't know. It feels like we're just capitalism to me. Capitalism implies that you have a private individual that can purchase capital, and when we say capital, we're specifically referring to like revenue generating things that workers or labor combines with to generate a good or service. So capital, it might be purchasing a massage table for a massager to come in and work on. It might be purchasing a hamburger joint. It might be purchasing a railroad track, whatever. That's capital. Capitalism implies a private earner or a private owner who takes that capital, pays for workers, labor, to combine with that capital to generate goods or services, and to take a revenue because he has ownership of the capital, because he's paying the workers, he collects profits, he gets rents from owning that means of production. That's capitalism. Socialism to me, where we've socialized the means of production, means that there's no longer any private owners, and the employees are more or less dictating the terms of their employment. They have equal ownership shares in what's existing. There is no more private investor scraping profits off the top of their labor. Whatever they generate, they earn all of because they collectively own the thing. I guess like
I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding.
Okay, sure. Right? Tell me. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm not understanding. Okay.
Because I don't think even early socialists, like obviously like Marx and people like that, I don't think that they would say that socialism is when the returns to capital are completely given to workers. I mean, like even Marx in his writings said that in an ideal society, you put away certain money for administration, certain money for something, he uses crazy flowery language, but essentially certain money for welfare, right? Like assistance to the poor. And only then does the worker get whatever his or her share of the returns to capital, right? And it's true that in a contemporary sense, there are a lot of socialists that, their brand of socialism is when essentially all returns go to the worker. But this is a very, not incoherent, but like if you're an egalitarian socialist, right? If you're someone who at least has some sort of care for like the functioning of capital markets, right? You can't really claim either of those things and argue for like a Vosh style.
We can't have capital markets in any socialist anything, no?
I mean, you could, right? So like that's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why I think the best functional conception of socialism is the Matt Brunick conception, because if we imagine a system where socialism is just collective ownership of capital, right, which is sort of classically what socialism is, and collective ownership could be many different forms. Well, if we essentially just had competing public sovereign wealth fund and like endowment management funds, competing, allocating capital But the returns to those allocations were entirely socialized, and those firms were ultimately accountable to some like government board or bureaucracy. Well, I mean,
but like, how are they?
You have capital markets
when those
socialism.
social funds are investing in things. You're just saying that all of the profits are just going back to the government or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, in one degree or another, right? You'd probably have some retained earnings to the fund.
What would the incentive be if I was like a worker at one of these firms? Why would I ever want one of those socialized investment firms to buy capital from me and exploit my labor?
You're asking, why would a worker work in such a system?
Yeah, well, like if I'm in some ultra uber socialized system, I don't want any of these social wealth funds investing in me, because the whole point of me being a socialist is now I get to earn the fruits of my labor. If somebody else is investing capital in me, I'm necessarily having my work exploited now, right? They're taking some kind of rent, or they're collecting some kind of thing off the top of it, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, I guess it would depend on how the money is managed, right? So, for instance, in Norway, they have a big, giant sovereign wealth fund, but the money that is returned from their sovereign wealth fund is essentially just goes back into the government treasury for social purposes. So, welfare spending, funding the administrative state, things like this. And, of course, we can imagine an economy that's entirely socialized in this manner of these sort of decentralized public, investment funds, where there's probably smaller investment funds for local purposes, like maybe local pension funds and stuff like that. But then there's sort of a national sovereign wealth fund or multiple national sovereign wealth funds that just get returned back to people in the form of like a dividend check. And so, of course, in that scenario, we can say, okay, well, a worker would still work at a company, because essentially, functionally, what would happen is every worker owns a piece of every other workplace. Right?
Sure, but then at that point, I feel like we're like creating a bunch of like kind of meme systems for literally no reason, right? Because it sounds like you're talking about we're creating competing sovereign wealth funds, or I'm sorry, we're creating competing socialized funds where all of the profits go back to all the people. So you've got like a bunch of funds that are investing in a bunch of companies, but at the end of the day, all the profits are literally going to the exact same place. And like I don't know why we.
Well, the point of that system, and again, I don't agree with, like, I'm not a socialist, right? And so I don't agree, but the reason this is the best argument is because I think it gets around a lot of the structural critiques of different socialist models. So for instance, like authoritarian socialism is bad because it's authoritarian. Worker democracy socialism is bad because it's highly unequal and probably has a lot of inefficient allocation.
Sure, whereas, but the reason why you're getting around all the issues, this is why I have problems when like Vosh talks about market socialism. Like the reason why you're getting out of all the hard issues is because you're basically ceding the entire argument to saying that like, okay, things like price controls and command economy and determining inputs and outputs by government, like all of this shit, like that's impossible. And we're just ceding all that ground, which I guess is fine. That's one of the arguably the largest benefits of capitalism, I think. Right, is that inputs and outputs are dynamically determined by private firms and capital that are responding to
creative destruction.
Yeah. However, how do you get those how do you get those incentives back on capital if every social firm, if all the money they earn profiting is going back to the same place? Like, who the fuck cares what you invest in at that point? Because if my investment firm fucks up, I'm just going to collect all the money from the other investment firm, and at the end of the day, who the fuck cares what I invest in at all?
Yeah, so this is my disagreement with Matt Bruenig. Like the only disagreement I think that you can have with a model like Matt Bruenig is that one essentially, which is that, well, hey, like if essentially every enterprise is collectivized into 5 or 6 different gigantic public investment funds, like what's the real incentive to really efficiently allocate capital, right? Because every socialist economy that's ever existed has had problems with overinvestment, like inefficient allocation. And his response to that will be, and I think it's the most incoherent thing Matt Bruenig says, right? But what his response will be is, well, in a world where public,
people are just going to try their best, or what? Sorry, go.
Well, yeah. So essentially, in a world where the public is the universal owner, right? All the same incentives to efficiently allocate capital exist, right? Because if you own everything, then you're not going to want to invest in like shitty industries or like bad businesses. But of course, practically speaking, in a democratic economy, or really any sort of socialist economy, there's like a lot of political reasons why you wouldn't just say, oh yeah, just let this entire industry fail.
Yeah, I was going to say, would the same country that voted for Bush, would that country be willing to make big investments in green energy? Or
right, like either not investing in good emerging technologies or investing in technologies that are dying, right? Sure. Like this is the problem that you'd probably see in this system. And that's why, to me, a mixed production model makes sense. I was going to say, like you said at one point in that video, you said something like if you describe everything as a mixed production model, what does socialism and capitalism even mean?
Because there was some idiot that should have their teaching license revoked, saying that they're a social studies teacher in Canada, saying that America and Canada and Europe aren't capitalist countries, they have mixed economies, which is probably one of the most retarded fucking things you can ever say in your entire life, because literally every economy in the history of all of fucking mankind has been a mixed economy. There's no such thing as like any pure version of any fucking economic organization. Yeah.
Right, like it's a kind of a dumb statement, right? But I think that
it's not kind of a dumb statement. It's one of the most retarded statements that you can make. Sorry, go.
Well, I guess like, are you saying it's retarded because it's essentially not? It's like, well, every economy is a mixed economy. What's the point of even saying that?
Exactly. It's retarded because it would be like me pointing to someone and going like, oh, look, that's a human being. And then me going, that's not a human being. That's a human being and clothes and shoes and glasses. Like, yeah, okay, sure. Wait, what? Right? When somebody says that my understanding, when somebody says there's a capitalist economy, right? A capitalist economy is generally one that has private investors that can own businesses and collect rents, and it's got like capital markets. Private ownership is a really important thing. But there's almost certainly going to be some form of like government intervention. Now, if you want to say like colloquially, or even like depending on the level of academia you're getting into for the discussion, the United States is best described as a mixed economy, but it's a mixed capitalist economy. And you would never say, if somebody's like, oh, I prefer the United States to like hardcore socialism because I like capitalism, you would never object and go like, oh, well, the U.S. isn't a capitalist economy, you idiot. It's a mixed economy. Yeah, so is the Soviet Union. Yeah. So is Vietnam. Like, what a stupid fucking statement. I got it.
I actually think that there can be a lot of utility to pointing that out in certain environments, let's say. So for instance, like if I'm talking to like a really conservative person who's like, I'm a capitalist, I hate socialism, and it's like, well, hey, but like, what about, don't you like the USPS?
Yeah,
like
well,
that's a
don't bring that up. I mean, I know what you mean, but
the
like,
government enterprise, right? Yeah, I mean, or like, hey, don't you like Medicare?
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Social Security is a big
government-owned insurance company, right? Like that's what Medicare is, right? And so, I mean, there's, I think it's fair to point out, like, hey, you might love capitalism, but even in America, which is like a very capitalist country, there's a lot of what you could call socialist institutions, right? And if we think of economies as just a spectrum of private or collectivized institutions, we can start to see that mixed production kind of succeeding or failing in different countries, whether it's like a heavy state ownership economy like Cuba or the USSR, or it's like this, kind of democratic mixture of production like Norway. We can have a more granular argument of like what should be socialized and what should be privately organized. I think that the way to think about it is similar to the arguments, like you had this big blow up where people in your audience were saying, why aren't you calling Nick Fuentes a Nazi? And you had this, I think it was a pretty good argument, which was like, what's the point of calling him a Nazi when we can't even seem to agree what that means? And if you think Nazism is anti-Semitism, let's just talk about anti-Semitism. If you think Nazism is like fascist economics, let's just talk about that, right? There's no reason to really debate whether or not someone is binarily a Nazi or not. And I think similarly, when it comes to capitalist or socialist, like everyone pretty much believes in a mixture of the two. Most people are not like, I literally believe in 100% socialization of the economy. And most people aren't like anarcho-capitalists where, I think literally everything should be privately organized, right? So maybe it's, I get what you're saying, it's a vacuous statement, but really it's
that's
the most useful lens to think about.
It depends on how it's used, because it's the Mott and Bailey thing is what I said. Because all these dickless fucking virgins in the H3H3 subreddit that are saying that like, oh no, it's a mixed economy, they're not arguing for socialism as an increased spending and safety nets. In fact, a healthy number of those people are probably against increased social spending because they're accelerationists and they want to bring the whole fucking system down as quickly as possible to transition to true socialism. Right? So, no, I reject that. I understand what you're saying, and you might mean it when you say it. And if you and I were having a discussion, we'd probably agree on most things relating to this. That's fine. But these, like, fucking losers, they're not talking about like social safety nets. They're talking about the elimination of private ownership. Can you acknowledge that? That most of the people online, when they talk about quote unquote socialism, they're not just talking about more government spending. They mean the elimination of private ownership.
So,
maybe Matt Brunig isn't, and the other guys.
Well,
on
no,
Twitter,
because I was gonna say like even like AOC, like someone who would call themselves a socialist.
No, I'm not talking about AOC, and I'm not talking about Bernie Sanders. I wouldn't consider either of those two socialists.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that like I think most online people who say I'm a socialist, they really just kind of come from I kind of became a fan of Bernie, and now I like Hasan, and they call themselves socialist. And so, yeah, like capitalism sucks, but they don't really have like a coherent view on.
I agree. It is incoherent,
You
and
know-
that's why they deserve to be called psychotic retards. And you should make fun of them savagely on the internet until they either delete their accounts or they delete their lives. I agree 100%. But I don't agree in acquiescing to them and go like, okay, you're right. I do agree with socialism. When the next phrase that they're going to diarrhea out of their mouth is, oh, great, we need to eliminate all exploitation of labor by getting rid of private ownership, because that's the next step for these people. It's not just like, oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
We can agree that we need expanded social safety nets. That's not what they want. They want the elimination of private ownership. Like, you should go read through those H3 threads. Like, again, if you, me, and Brunig or whatever were talking, like, my guess is going to be that what I'll allow you to slide with on what you consider like socialism, and probably what you allow me to slide on what I consider like capitalism, is going to be a lot different, right? Much the same with, I agree with you, and I've had these arguments before, if some dipshit conservative's like, I believe in a purely capitalist society, and I don't think blah, 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 I'd be like, motherfucker, weren't you getting like unemployment insurance over COVID because you
What
got
about
laid
the
off from your
military?
fucking job? Yeah. What about the largest jobs program we have in the United States, which is the fucking military? What's more socialized or what's more government spending than literally the United States, like employing people like that, right? Like, of course I would bring that up, but in front of people in H3 threads saying that like billionaires are evil, landlords are evil, that are imitating Hasan, who says let the blood of landlords run through the streets. You think I would ever? That'd be like me using the N-word jokingly around Nick Fuentes. Like, no, fuck no, I'm not gonna cede any ground to those people. That's insane.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, I do see what you're saying. I mean, anytime I've spoken with socialists who are like vanguard,
Yes.
party type socialists, where it's like, oh yeah, just get rid of democracy for a little bit. Hey, just for a little bit, just temporary no democracy, and we'll figure it out. Like, no, I don't think that'll work, my guy. But yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think that I can understand how the context of who you're talking about should, to some degree, influence your rhetoric on the subject, right? Like, for instance, if you're talking to, if you're talking to Nick Fuentes about like race realism and you're arguing about, crime in the black community, like that's probably going to be a very different type of rhetoric that I would use versus if I'm talking to like, I don't know, fucking Al Sharpton or some shit, right? It's going to be a very different conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that's all to say that I do think that even when talking to like a really radical socialist, I think that you can I think it helps to deprogram them a bit, right?
I don't think it helps. Their deprogram has to be violently bringing them back to reality. Okay, like most of these guys, because no, I mean, like they really do. They need to have the shit beat out of them by people in Eastern Europe. They need to go to some other place in the world and get their fucking shit pushed in until they understand how fucking retarded the shit they're saying is. Like these guys are like literally a stone's throw away from throating fucking Stalin. They just don't want to admit it publicly because they don't know how to do the argument. They're too retarded. Like look at Hasan waffling on his support for even fucking Taiwan or Hong Kong. That motherfucker had to be dragged, kicking and screaming over the finish line just to support Ukraine, right? No, why the fuck would I give any ground to these fucking tanky losers that are just tankies by a different name now? They call themselves social democrats. They're not. They pretend that Europe is full of communist or socialist parties. It's not. They pretend that when they say socialism, they just mean expanded government spending. They don't. Like, no, I'm not gonna. Why would I cede any ground to these guys that literally treat anybody that supports capitalism as a fascist? Sorry.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I guess like if you were gonna debate, like obviously this probably won't happen, but like if you were gonna debate Hasan on stream, right? Like that was the schedule. Like, do you think if your goal was, jolt these people awake, right? Get them to realize what they believe in is kind of stupid. Do you think the best strategy would be like, Hasan, you're a secret authoritarian, secret Stalin defender?
The strategy would be the same thing I use for Swash. And I go, Hasan, just curious. There's another guy, and his name is Wasan. And Wasan has done every single thing you've done in life. He's achieved the same level of success, except he's actually hyper-capitalist. Can you give me one way that you live your life differently than he does? That would be my question. And he would have no fucking answer because he lives his life exactly as a hyper-consumerist, hyper-capitalist would, with absolutely no difference between what him and a more capitalist version would look like. There is no such thing as a more capitalist version of Hasan. It doesn't exist.
I see what you're saying. So I guess you think if you were a socialist, if you were like a true socialist, you're saying you'd probably want to, I guess, donate a lot of your wealth or, organize a lot
or
more
do
than Hasan
anything,
does.
run anything, run your where are your democratically owned businesses? Why don't you run your YouTube channels cooperatively? Why don't you split the means of production or the ownership? That fucking retard said, "Oh, I bought my editor I gave him the means of production when I bought him a graphics card or whatever." Like, yeah, sure. Like, why don't any of the socialism is so fucking good? We live in a capitalist economy right now, but if you want to, you can go open a co-op. Nobody's fucking stopping you, right? You can go and practice socialism in almost any way you want, depending on where you're at in the United States. Like, why don't people like Hasan fund it? Why don't people like Vosh fund it? It's because it's a dog shit way of organizing your economy. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I guess to be fair, in the case of a cooperative.
Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. I think, no, I totally understand. I mean, we're just having a normal conversation, but like, no, I get what you're saying. I mean, obviously, in the case of donating to a cooperative, I think that, I think the issue for like Hasan and Vosh in terms of like, why don't you just donate and form a cooperative? I think it's because, well, you'd be investing in something that you wouldn't get anything out of, right? Because all the workers would own everything, and you wouldn't be working
wasn't
there.
that the whole point?
No, I see it. I that's what I'm saying. Like, I can see what you're saying in terms of like, they don't seem to be organizing towards their society in this way,
and they don't live their lives like it's even good. So like, for instance, I personally think that like rev share or paying your employees a lot, I think that's a really good way to motivate people. And then that's what I do with my businesses, right? Or I think that like not shitting on people or not backstabbing, like I've got personal values that I preach to other people when it comes to running channels or running businesses. I think you should be like as politically involved as you feel like you can be. Like, I think you should probably take care of loved ones, blah, blah, blah. Like these things that I tell other people, for the most part, like I do most of these things. I live most of things in my life. You're not gonna I don't think anybody's ever called me like a hypocrite unless it's NFTs. But like in general, like I practice like all of my business shit as I would. I can't imagine being out here talking about espousing the evils of capitalism while living the most hyper capitalist fucking lifestyle ever. I don't know how people don't see that and just go fucking crazy.
So I guess it sounds like, yeah, I guess it's these like socialist influencers that you have a big problem with, because like you wouldn't say the same thing about someone like AOC. It's like, well, no, like she's running for Congress, like she is advocating, like she's trying to do what she thinks is best to actually forward her, whatever her ideal economy, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but then I would argue that AOC and Bernie Sanders triggered me because they brought back that socialism boogeyman. But they're not usually talking about socialism either. They're just talking about expanded social safety nets. Why are you okay with calling expanded social safety nets socialism? You're not fundamentally altering the relationship between between like worker and owner at all. None of that is being fundamentally altered. It's just expanded social safety nets. Why do we call this socialism? I don't understand. Because
honestly,
the reason why too is because capitalism is fucking awesome. Capitalism does what it does very well. Markets are real. Markets are incredibly powerful. They demand respect no matter how you engage with them. In some cases, they can be incredibly destructive, and in some cases, be incredibly beneficial. Right? Capitalism has gotten us some of the worst pollution in history, and capitalism delivered a groundbreaking vaccine, if you trust it, in like fucking 9 months. Like, capitalism does good things, capitalism does bad things, and the best things when they work together. So I don't know why we just like, oh, we're going to move away from capitalism and expand social safety nets. Okay, motherfucker, that's not moving away from capitalism. That's still perfectly within the world of capitalism. And one of the greatest things about capitalism and liberalism, too, is that it's so fucking flexible. And that's why it's so superior to these dog shit fucking socialist wannabe fucking losers. I'm glad, as much as I hate the guy, that Elon Musk basically got us back into fucking outer space, or that he almost single-handedly like jump-started the world initiative for getting electric cars, electric vehicles. Like, yeah, he had public funding behind him and subsidies and shit, but that was a private billionaire business owner that did it, right? I don't know.
Like that's a good example of the
blend.
pull and play of exactly. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I mean, yeah, again, like I advocate for a mixed production model. I think that that's kind of where I am, I guess. And that's most everybody. That's why I think it's like I've only ever seen.
Hold on, wait.
Bernie.
You got to stop saying that. Because if what you were saying was true, I would be crazy. You have to stop saying that's almost everybody. Because anytime we talk about housing prices, everybody wants to talk about evil landlords are.
No. I'm saying when I say most people. No. Hold on.
Yeah, sorry.
I will say, I don't think like average regular people. I mean, Twitter lefty, sure, but like I think average regular people are not like we need to kill the landlords and like. Fucking,
I understand what you're saying. The ship has sailed so far on that one. I look to Twitter now for what real life discourse is going to be, honestly, and I think everybody does because that's where we've gotten. That's what it's seeped into. Like the internet is setting discourse now. Not maybe, absolutely. Like we're years past that inflection point where online discourse. It's what's setting the tone for what our future like what our future political landscape is looking like. I don't think we can just like write it
so
off as
it's
Twitter
just like
cinema.
delayed. You're saying like, oh, like in 20 years that'll be like a median opinion.
In like more
You know.
like in 20 weeks.
In 20 weeks.
Keep in
I
mind
don't know,
that
I
even
think-
even during the primaries, I keep cutting you off. If I cut you off, cut me off. I'm sorry if I do that right. Even during the primaries, Bernie Sanders had to disavow his fucking Twitter fans who were fucking unhinged, right? Like, I mean, it's. I mean,
that's
look at all the
true. I think
cancellation shit, the colleges, the everything. Right? Yeah, sorry, go on.
I mean, you know, you could be right. Like maybe the 2028, because I mean, I don't think the 2024 primary is really going to give a showcase of this. But like, you know, you're right. Like maybe the 2028 primary, we'll see like a truly anti-capitalist candidate like really come to prominence because that's just where the mood has shifted. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really see that too much. It seems like the most popular like quote unquote socialist politicians are like Bernie Sanders AOC types, where they don't really their rhetoric is not even nearly as extreme as what you're describing, but it could happen. I mean, who would have thought that Trump would be like the standard bearer for Republican politics for like the last decade? That would have been really hard to imagine. So maybe it just takes like one person to really get popular and do it.
Sure.
But
I think right now you don't really have very many strong supporters of capitalism, right? Because whereas traditionally the Republicans would have done that, populists don't give a fuck really about like motor production.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? Or means of production.
I mean, they're more like, I don't know. I feel like right-wing anti-capitalism is I don't want to say it's fake, but
no, it's been very popular since the Tea Party. I think the Tea Party is what really threw us into kind of like this anti-corporate and anti-corporatist kind of new conservative movement. Like, whereas traditionally Republicans would have been the staunchest of defenders of big business. You want to attack Facebook? Facebook is one of the biggest contributions that United States large companies have made to the world in terms of like software technology and everything. But now, like, conservatives fucking it because
I was
going to
say like I feel like the right-wing anti-capitalism is it's almost more socially motivated, right? Because I feel like whereas I think left-wing anti-capitalism is really much more of like a purely economic discussion. I mean, I get what you're saying. Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, really quick, because I get what you're saying where, like, obviously leftists will say that, I don't know, like, rainbow capitalism is bad and, maybe there's some social critiques of, like, where you're donating money to and things like this. But I think that a lot of the motivations of anti-corporate rhetoric and anti-capitalist rhetoric from right-wingers is more like, oh my God, I saw this company fucking endorse ESG and oh my God, they appointed a black person as their CEO and that was just fucking affirmative action. It's like, I don't really see a lot of actual structural economic critique in right-wing anti-capitalist rhetoric.
Really, I feel like it all comes in the form of protectionism of different industries and isolationism. Like, we need to stop sending money to Ukraine. We need to focus on domestic production. We need to ban imports from XYZ countries. We need to produce things locally, buy America. We need to reduce immigration, too much competition with local workers, domestic workers. Like, I feel like I feel like all of this is highly economically intertwined. But NAFTA and trade agreements are bad. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, talking about the trade and stuff, I feel like that's true. I mean, that's probably a pretty good point. I guess whenever I see a right-winger try to stake out like a truly pro-worker position, it seems like it often just falls into really, again, just more broader social critique, right? Because I feel like the genuine onus for being anti-immigration isn't necessarily being anti-capitalism. It's just like not liking brown people, a lot of times.
Sure,
like,
and I agree with you, but like if I drill a lefty on why landlords are evil and billionaires should be executed, you think I'm going to find any economic policy there? I don't think so. It's going to drill back to this naive, like, I don't like rich people, except for my parents.
Yeah, like, well, right. I think they might just say, the inequality in our society is really, really bad and a problem. I think it's wrong or whatever, like more of a moral economic critique, right? But, I mean, it's just, I don't know, like, when I think about the people who support things like, collectivization, unionization, things like this, I mean, it seems to, like, I mean, when's the last time you saw a right-winger do a photo op at a picket line? Right-wing politicians don't do that, right? And I think it's because they're not really genuinely motivated by a structural critique of capitalism. It's really, again, more so like, hey, our base really seems to like rhetoric against, woke corporations or, trans people or fucking Muslims or something, right? And it's not really as much of, oh, our base really, really hates the fact that they go into companies without union representation and don't get, the share of profits. You know what I mean? that's just my sense of things. I get what you're saying. Like, it's probably becoming more and more so, a pure economic critique. But
sure, like the phrase where like billionaires necessitate inequality. I might like be behind you more if the quote wasn't like billionaires are evil. But like, I understand what you're saying. Sure. I just think that it's shifting more and more to this kind of like quasi socio-political thing that really doesn't have anything to do with economic analysis more. I feel like one of the perfect encapsulations of that was that fucking loser Abigail, what's her name now, or what was her name? It's not Perspective Philosophy, it's Philosophy Tube. Do you know her?
Abigail Thorne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When she fucking tweeted out that she wasn't going to pay her rent because she felt it was like exploitation during COVID, and chances are she was making like 10 times the fucking salary as whatever her landlord was making. How fucking that's like, I don't know. When I see shit like that, I'm like, fuck this. Get me the fuck out of here.
Well, that's like obvious virtue signaling, I would say. I mean, obviously they're not really, that's like very convenient virtue signaling as well, because obviously if they get evicted, it's probably not as big a deal as if like an actually poor person gets evicted for not paying their rent. So, I don't really take that too seriously. I see what you're saying there. And I also see what you're saying where like I feel like most people who would call themselves socialists today probably just generally don't have a great understanding of
anything in life, like, or the world, or the economy, or finance, or social or government policy, right? Like anything.
I think when people say socialist, they really just mean like I don't like capitalism, but I don't really have a strong view of what the alternative actually looks like. Because you're right, like a lot of people who would call themselves socialists will advocate for things like more welfare spending or like higher taxes on billionaires, and like there's nothing that changes the productive model of society by just having more welfare and more taxes
or just saying they want to like have every like all landlords need to die or all, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever met, like, I don't think any the conversation started with somebody like, oh, I'm a socialist, and I learned something from them, because usually they're fucking retarded. I'm saying that like if I had a magic lamp with a genie and I had 3 wishes and I was standing in a room with 100 socialists and I wished that everybody who had an IQ higher than 92 were to die, nobody would drop dead. That's what I'm saying. Like for any time I meet these people, their understanding of literally any part tangential to anything having to do with finance, economies, governments, history, anything, all the knowledge is non-existent. But maybe they're out there somewhere else, and I don't know. Just I hate these.
Well, I guess like how unique do you think that is to socialists? Because honestly, like, I mean, I don't think right wingers really have a strong grasp of the economy either, right? It's these fucking
you're right. You're
people
right.
who are like,
Sure.
the nuanced people like me, have oftentimes the strongest grasp. But the people who are like conservative ideologues, I mean, I talked to Rob Noor for 5 hours, or it was like a 5-hour debate we had on economics, and I didn't really. Again, like a lot of the economic positions of like someone like Rob Noor, it seemed like it was more based on just like simple intuition. Like for instance, he's like a pretty. I'm sure he wouldn't call himself anti-capitalist, but like for instance, like he'll say something like, "I don't like the idea of government regulation because I don't trust the government." Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's not really like. There's many instances where it turns out the government does do a good job, but like Rob Noor is just like, that just doesn't feel right. I don't trust the idea that the government could like, basically be good and like solve a lot of issues by doing government shit. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of right wingers think. Whereas a lot of left wingers would basically just, say the opposite.
I kind of agree with you, but like, here's the issue that I have right now. And it's very frustrating. That's why I'm out here doing what I do. Okay. I would take absolutely Ben Shapiro's understanding and vision of an economy over any far left person on the internet, over Sam Cedar, over Hasan, over Vosh. I would take Ben Shapiro's over 1 billion %.
Wow, really?
That
is
easily.
You really
Easily.
Wait, hold on. Let me clarify. So you would say, if I had to give a person the keys to restructure the economy, I would choose Ben Shapiro over Sam Cedar.
Without a second thought. Yeah, absolutely.
That is crazy.
Absolutely. But
the
issue
Sam Cedar's
is
not even that extreme, though,
I have almost no respect left for Sam Cedar after watching the way he conducts himself online through multiple parties. I don't even know what planet that guy's on anymore. But the issue that I'm running into is that you've got the far right, who are fucking insane, okay? Just as insane as, or more than the far left. Then you've got, like, I say the center right, but it's right now it's really just Ben Shapiro, okay?
There's no center right.
Yeah, then you've got the far left, like the Hasan, the Sam Cedars, like all these other guys, And there's like online, who the fuck are your center left representatives? You've got like people like Pod Save America and shit, but like who are your center left like YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever besides me? Like where are these people? They don't exist.
Yeah.
Because these would be the people that I would obviously say I would take a center well, we could go on Twitter. Who's the guy with the Brunig, and who's the other popular guy or whatever? Fuck. He made the $1 million bet over the crypto shit.
Oh, Medlock. Yeah.
Yeah, Medlock. Like these types of guys, if like Medlock or I think Brunig, I don't think I've ever read a retarded tweet by Brunig. If like Medlock or Brunig, if you were to say would I take them over Shapiro, 1,000,000%, of course. I would take their restructuring of the economy. But like it feels like these people have no voices online. Or Noah Smith, I think. Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, really, of course they have. I would call like especially like someone like Noah Smith. I would say he's got. I mean, what does he literally have the biggest Substack or something? Like he's got obviously a pretty big reach. He's got like I mean, he's making a fuckload of money from his Substack. It's pretty crazy, but like
okay, that's cool if he does.
I mean, I think that a lot of these guys are certainly. I would say if you put like Noah Smith, Matt Brunig, Medlock in a basket, these people, I would say collectively they might have the same reach as singularly Hasan, but I get your point. Like I get your point that
wait, do you really think so?
If you put all three of them together, I wouldn't be surprised if it was pretty even.
Okay.
But the point is like, but that's just Hasan, right? Like you're not including people like Vosh or Brianna Joy Gray or all, Jimmy Dore, and these people all have their own audiences as well. So I get what you're saying. Like the room for like a moderate person is pretty slim, it seems, but it's. I mean, also, when you think about the people we just mentioned, like Matt Brunig, James Medlock, Noah Smith, these aren't really, like myself even, like I wouldn't call myself center or like moderate, right? It's really just, I think that myself and those three people are just like pretty informed people. Whereas like someone like Hasan or Brianna Joy Gray and stuff like that, like in terms of economic discussions, really just not very informed. And I think that that's the big difference where Ben Shapiro and Sam Seder, it sounds like that's really more so what you're saying, not necessarily how extreme they are, because Ben Shapiro is just as right-wing as Sam Seder is left-wing. But I feel like you're perceiving Ben Shapiro as basically just...
I disagree with that, but maybe that's just because the right-wing has ran off like so far. Like Ben Shapiro gets a lot of points in my book for believing the last election was real, for not like avowedly threatening Trump, although that might change if Trump wins the election, and he kind of half does. For thinking like that vaccines are okay and they don't put like 5G chips in you. Yeah, but I mean like that, it's a pretty low bar for being a conservative today. But honestly, if there was like a left-leaning commentator that doesn't identify as a socialist, that's also like a really low. I'd be like, oh, okay, this guy's probably pretty cool.
I mean, Sam Seder, like David Pakman, Sam Seder. I mean, I don't. Well, I guess Medlock says he's a market. So I mean, Medlock. I mean, like
I don't even consider.
Sam Seder and Dave Pakman.
I don't consider market socialism real social. I think it's like some meme shit that people do because they realize that socialism is fucking retarded. So
market socialism is not real.
No, I mean it's by definition it's not. Nobody does it.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's like what Vosh calls himself. But I think market socialism is a way to like hold on to kind of like the socialist label and social spending while realizing that like socialism is a wholly untenable like organization of an economy and that it will never fucking work. And then you get to keep all the nice aspects of like capitalism and markets and private investment and all the things that make capitalism work, the engines of capitalism. But then you do like a bunch of like strong unions and lots of social security and socialized healthcare and like that. And you're like, oh, market socialism. I don't know, cringe. But hey, I mean, it's where I'll take it. I'm fine with that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think that. But would you say? I guess in general, like, I feel like you think Ben Shapiro is just smarter than Sam Seder. It's not really about like the radicalness of their political. Because Sam Seder's not a socialist. I don't think he's ever called himself socialist.
I don't know. Honest to God, I don't know Sam Seder's economic views. I'm pretty sure the last time I heard anything he talks about the economy usually sounds pretty reasonable. I've just lost a lot of like trust in him as a person, so I don't even know what I would trust. It feels like he's.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's less the actual messaging and more just like you feel like Ben Shapiro is like a more reasonable, informed person.
A little bit.
You know what I mean?
My bar for do I trust you on economic stuff is generally like, it usually comes down to the question of like, do I feel like this person respects market forces? If the answer is yes, then I'll hear you out for what you have to say about the economy. If the answer is no, then you should rope before ever opening your mouth about anything related to the economy. That's my general takeaway.
that's you should respect all the market socialists then, Destiny. Come on.
Yeah, because they're basically capitalists. I do respect them. If you're
Well,
a
I
market
see what you're
socialist, that means you've already gone through the internal struggle of realizing that socialism is dog shit. So yeah, good job. Nice base. Market socialists are base.
I see. No, that makes sense. I mean, well, all right. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I definitely, I definitely disagree that I'd much rather have Sam Cedar in charge than Ben Shapiro. Maybe they'll run for president and get you against each other one day. That'll be like 2032 or 2036 election when they're both a bit older.
Well,
But,
Sam Cedar's gonna have to do a lot of work to earn my vote back because right now the guzzle meter is very low. Okay, I'm not guzzling the Cedar right now. I'm not feeling it as much, but.
If you had to vote for president between Trump or Sam Cedar, who would you pick?
I don't even have to think. Obviously, I'm getting Trump. I hate Cedar. No, I'm just kidding. I would probably vote for almost. I'd probably vote for. Oh, I almost said something really unhinged. I'd vote for almost anybody over Trump at this point. They would have to do a
I'd
lot.
vote for Hitler over fucking
That's exactly what I was going to say, but then I was like, you know what? Probably not. Actually, I was like, that would have been an unhinged statement.
Probably Trump would be better than Hitler.
Yeah,
on
probably.
Second thought.
I think so.
I
Well,
see what
actually,
you're
you know what? You could make an argument, actually, that he wouldn't be, because you know what? If we elected Hitler, at least everybody would know he's Hitler, instead of these fucking conservative simp dipshits that have, like, somehow deluded themselves into thinking that they're not supporting an avowed fucking fascist when they absolutely are. And then I wouldn't have to feel deranged for calling him a fascist anymore. So, you know what? I don't actually know. Maybe Hitler would be better, because then at least we could all agree that he's fucking bad. So, who knows, you know? I just had to listen to fucking 2 years of conservatives crying about fucking trans kids raping everybody in bathrooms and groomers all over our fucking schools. And now you've got this big booby, 38 DDDDD fucking tit queen giving her fucking boyfriend a hand job in an open fucking theater while cheating on her husband. And it seems like the conservative media is strangely fucking silent on this. I hate conservatives so fucking much. If that was a fucking Democrat, they would have been trying to execute this dude for like public indecency. Fucking kill me, fam. Holy shit. Sorry, I'm done.
Did you see I think it's like a woman running for like state representative or something in Virginia who got like she literally had I think she had like a chatterbait or something and she made content with her husband.
Based? Hello.
I mean, it seems like I don't know, people are actually kind of chill with it. I mean, obviously everyone's fucking clowning on her, but like it seems like not quite as much judgment as I would have figured.
Yeah. Well, give me that person. I'll vote for her, okay? Wait, is that a Democrat or a Republican?
So that's what I was saying. That was a Democrat, not a hypocritical Republican. Just a degenerate Democrat doing Democrat things.
Gotcha.
So, but now I see where I see what you're saying. Obviously, I don't think that. I think that there's very little principle on
everybody
in most people's politics nowadays. It seems like most people are kind of operating on just like kind of
who owns the other side or who's part of my team or like but I mean I say that but it's always been like this, right? It truly has been. It feels like it's more than it ever has been, but who the fuck knows?
It's one of the reasons why I do think that a renewed, and maybe you disagree, but I do think that a renewed labor movement could actually solve a lot of these problems. That like if you look at the effects of like high union density, it seems like people become more communal when there's a lot of unions around. It seems like there's a bit more kind of pro-labor politics and policy based on actual material outcomes because unions tend to help workers and stuff. And it seems like a lot of the countries that have been able to essentially just not have as much like radical politics have like pretty strong labor movements, like there's right wing and left wing parties in the Nordic countries and the UK and places like this, but it's not quite as bad as the US because there's not really a lot of we don't really have a lot of community institutions in America left, you know, with unions going away, the church isn't really as it's like what do you like who goes to their community center, you know what I mean? Like I don't think anybody does that anymore. So I think something like a renewed labor movement could make sense, but it's difficult because most people who would say what I just said are like socialists, who would say like we need unions as a step towards socialism. But I feel like a lot of these I feel like if a lot of these conservatives were like part of unions or had family members as part of unions or something like that, like there'd be more there'd be like a lower temperature when talking about reforms and
I agree.
How to
we just need to get like some
fucking
we need to get like some steelworkers union to like ban like the promotion of like trans employees or some shit, and then we can get like all the conservatives back on board, because that's what we knew before like the Civil Rights Act. Like if we wanted to enforce racism in the workplace, the best way to do it was through unions. I feel like we could sell unions back to conservatives that way, right? Keep Mexicans from taking your jobs, don't let your union boss like hire brown people, like boom, and then you got like support the conservative movement again. But I don't know.
Got me. No, that's fair. I mean, I think unions have not been entirely only force for good, I guess I should say. But in general, I think they would be.
They'd be good now because there's
positive.
more power with employers than employees, right? Which I think we can all probably rightfully agree on, yeah. But then that's another issue too.
Yeah.
But that's like it's more in the weeds than I would even care to get into with the average fucking retard, right? I really don't. I wish that people. I don't know. I just wish that people could see things for like what they are, right? Like unions aren't good or bad. Unions are just like collections of employees to negotiate. Sometimes unions can be really good if you're an employee. Sometimes unions can be really bad if you're an employer. And then like the relationship is vice versa, right? Employers are trying to fuck employees. Employees want to fuck employers. People will say like they love unions, but they sure as fuck don't like police unions. Or some people say they hate unions and then they feel there's certain ways about other. I don't know. Like employers, yeah. But I mean, like that's a whole other conversation. I hate everything. I don't care. I'm just building my railroads,
Yeah.
okay? I'm fucking autistic as fuck. I didn't have my Adderall today, so now I'm like hyped up. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you coming down from your Adderall experience?
No, I'm just a fucking spaz fuck now. And
How did Adderall? How did you like Adderall?
It was
Did
good.
it help?
I felt super chill, super calm, very focused, not spazzy. I could let people finish sentences without cutting them off. It was a good experience, you know?
You ever think that like, because I remember in school, I really considered like, I don't know, like doing, like going in and trying to get anti-anxiety medication or like Adderall or something like that. But then I thought to myself like, man, if I take Adderall or something like anti-anxiety stuff, I feel like one of the things that makes me work hard and get good grades is the anxiety. So do you ever think like, man, if I take Adderall, I'm just going to be boring as fuck and chill all the time. Nobody's going to watch me.
No,
You know?
I say that, and I've said that on my stream. I had this conversation with somebody off stream the other day. That is a massive fucking cope, and every single time I've said that, it is a massive cope. I know it's a cope, and I'm like joking when I say it publicly, but I don't know if people know I'm joking when I say it publicly. Probably because I've never said that's a joke before. But if you've ever heard me say things like ADHD is nice because sometimes I'm rewarded for it because I can like read chat, I can do all these things at the same time, blah blah blah. That is the dumbest, most retarded fuck cope in the world. I can still read tons of chats without having ADHD. The difference is whether I choose to put my attention there or not. But the idea that like ADHD is some superpower that enables you to like get more work done or do more than like the average person is the biggest fucking cope in the world. ADHD doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't take away your ability to focus on multiple things at the same time. If anything, your focus and everything else would increase if you didn't have to deal with the ADHD. ADHD doesn't help you in any discernible way whatsoever, and any claim to the contrary is a massive cope for people that have ADHD and don't want to get it treated, like me. So, in my opinion.
I see what you're saying. I was thinking more like not necessarily the attention span, more like, because you're saying Adderall makes me chill. It makes me chill out. And I wonder, like, to what degree do you think your streams would just be more boring? Because
when I say it makes me chill, yeah, I understand what you're saying. When I say it makes me chill, I don't mean that it's not like a benzo where I'm like, ugh, where I'm like fucking like,
Sure.
yeah. It's more like if I get mad at something, it's because I'm choosing like, okay, I want to put some energy being upset at this thing instead of like having a collar around my neck where somebody's yanking me to get mad at a thing. So like yesterday I was on Adderall and Kelly was triggering the fuck out of me, and I could get triggered at Kelly for 3 hours and scream it or whatever. But if I'm not medicated, then I can have a conversation with someone, and I can just get, even if I'm like, okay, this is probably not a fight worth having, I can still get yanked in a direction and feel like I have to fight over something, even though I probably don't, right? Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I had a similar, I guess a somewhat similar experience. I started doing edibles to recover from workouts, and
What?
I noticed.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, essentially, like, I just had, like, really bad soreness. Somebody recommended edibles, and at least for me, it just helped a lot. Like, I didn't feel completely fucking crippled like, after doing a workout, and so it helped me a lot. But I noticed I had a similar experience where I was like, man, I thought edibles would make me just, like, a lazy asshole, but then it's like, no, like, if I take a reasonable amount, I can still be a really productive employee and do work and, like, focus on things, and it's not quite as... it's, how do I put it? It's not quite as like debilitating as you might imagine, like the stereotype of like the lazy stoner or something.
Sure.
And yeah, I guess it sounds like a little bit similar on Adderall, where like, yeah, I guess as long as you're not taking like a completely ridiculous amount, that of course, there's actually just, oh yeah, it turns out this medication actually just a lot of benefits to it if you take it in a reasonable dosage.
Yeah.
But no, I see what you're saying. I was just curious. But
No
well,
problem.
anyway, all right. I don't want to take up any more of your time. It was a good conversation. Yeah, I hope I've moved you closer to believing in the proletarian revolution.
Yeah, absolutely fucking not. Proletariats are retarded. That's why they're proletariats. So, but
Look, okay.
if they were
one
better
day-
humans, they would actually be they'd be the bourgeoisie, and they're not. So they'll never will be. They'll always be the plebes.
That's true. That's true. But all right, I'll talk to you later, bud. See ya.
Okay, I love you. Be careful.